right. Good evening, everybody. This is Rabbi Joseph Kolakowski, or my Hebrew name, Rabbi Yitzchak Kolakowski, the Koblenzer Rebbe, whatever you want to call me. And I'm answering this question on Quora from Ahmad Imran. How do Hasidim defend against the allegations of pantheism? So I can give you an answer that I heard from a Hasidic rabbi. He was a Gerer Chosid. He happens to be a convert to Judaism, Rabbi Asher Wade, who was a Protestant Methodist pastor and a chaplain with the American military. He was stationed in Germany. And while he was there, he converted to Judaism. Him and his wife and his children. And later on, he became a rabbi, and he lives in Jerusalem. And before he moved to Jerusalem, he moved back to Virginia, where he was born. Although he was born more in southern Virginia, he settled in Richmond, and he was, I believe, a college professor or something, or maybe trying to get ahead in business or something, and he was a member of a synagogue. I think that was at the time before I was even born, to be honest. But at the time, many years later, some 25 years later, maybe something, 20 years later, I was a rabbi in that synagogue, where he had at one point had served. But I remember I learned in the same yeshiva that he did, of course, again, many years later. And so I knew him in Israel, in Jerusalem. I don't like to say Israel, in Eretz Yisrael. When I lived there, I went in Jerusalem, and I served I studied in the yeshiva there in Or Sameach, where he studied. And he lives over nearby there, and he would give a class once or twice a year, a speech, something at Or Sameach. So anyway, Rabbi Wade, Sol Gesund sein, he came back to visit Richmond when I was the rabbi there in that synagogue. And, excuse me, and he gave his speech, his whole story about how he converted to Judaism from being a pastor and converting to Judaism and becoming a rabbi. And after the speech, some of the boys from the yeshiva asked him a very similar question. And I was listening in on their conversation. I was standing there listening. And I'll tell you, this is what he said. So he said, the difference, he said, between Spinoza and the Hasidic theology. Spinoza was declared a heretic for being a pantheist in where he lived in, Amsterdam, I think. And he was excommunicated from the Jewish community, which is a very liberal Jewish community. And to this day, if you want to do research on Spinoza, and you write to the Jewish community in Amsterdam, I'm saying it's a very liberal Orthodox Jewish community, but they'll tell you that he is still under the ban of excommunication, and anybody who is interested in studying about him is a persona non grata as far as that community is concerned. Now, with that being said, and again, this is not a Hasidic community, and perhaps even a community that rejects Hasidism, but I would not think that the community in Amsterdam would see a ban of excommunication on the Hasidic community the way that they see on Spinoza, or maybe they do. I don't know. I mean, I know, of course, the Vilna Gaon made a ban of excommunication on the Hasidic community, but I'm not sure if that theological issue was the issue. Although it's part of the argument between the Vilna Gaon and the Hasidim. But anyway, Rabbi Wade explained it like this. This is what what I would say would be the apologetic argument to this answer. A response, an apologetic response that he is giving. He said the Hasidic view would be like this: the world, as a matter of what we call mashal, a parable. The world could be compared to a sponge that's in the middle of the ocean, and the water fills the sponge. The sponge soaks up the water, and the water surrounds the sponge. This is the way Rabbi Dr. Wade explained himself. So he said the heresy of Spinoza was that all there is the sponge. All there is the universe, the physical universe, the creation. And Spinoza ignored the existence, or at least that's what he's accused of, and that would be the forbidden form of the heretical form of pantheism, is that he fails to see there's an entire ocean around the sponge that surrounds the sponge on all sides. And so in that sense, this is what the Hasidic view would be, is that God's light, so to speak, fills all worlds and surrounds all worlds. But the world is not all there is. And so the heretical pantheist would posit that all that exists is the world, and there's nothing else but this world, and that is God. Is the world, and that God is everywhere in the world, but that you're essentially defining God. The Hasidic approach, the way Rabbi Wade is explaining it, is that God fills all the worlds and surrounds all the worlds, and so God is present everywhere, but still God is separate from the world in a certain way. Because God transcends the world. So there's the dichotomy of transcendence and eminence, which is a theme that you find quite often in Hasidic literature. This dichotomy of transcendence and eminence, and how to rectify that dichotomy and show that it's really all one. And there's really unity and there is no dichotomy, but it's only an illusion of a dichotomy. And that is essentially the idea of the Hasidic theology, is that when the Kabbalists speak of what is called tzimtzum, which means constriction, that God drew himself back and made what's called a halal. He made an empty space in order to create the world so we could have free will. So this is my explanation, or all the Sfarim say, this is not what Rabbi Wade is saying. The Adkan Dvarav HaKadoshim is that, so the Hasidic understanding is what is called Tzimtzum Lav Kipshuto, that the constriction of God's existence, God's light, is not to be understood in its simple term, not to be taken literally, but rather, throughout Hasidic literature, it's described as an illusion. And it's interesting because Einstein, who again, he was not a Hasidic Jew, not an Orthodox Jew, he spoke of the optical delusion of that which is separate throughout the universe, and that the job of true religion is to remove this delusion and not to feed into it, and to recognize that the whole universe is one. The thing is that the Hasidic teaching, of course, is that there's much beyond this universe as well. There are many worlds, and then there's an infinite God, or Ein Sof, that transcends all of this. However, I want to cite another Hasidic teaching from the Piasetzner Rebbe, Hashem Yimkom Damo, Rabbi Kalman Shapiro. May the Lord avenge his blood, who was one of the martyrs in the Warsaw Ghetto. And the holy Rabbi Shapiro, the Piasetzner Rebbe, the Eish Kodesh, he wrote a sefer called Mavei Sha'arim. He wrote a Hasidic volume called The Entrance to the Gates. And he speaks about Hasidic theology and philosophy, as well as prophecy and Kabbalah and mysticism. And he says like this, that what is what we would call in Hebrew the Chidush, the Chiddush, what is the unique, novel idea that Hasidism gave to the Jewish community, meaning that there was something new that wasn't there before. And he says like this, the Kabbalists would teach that all of the worlds are Kelim Molei Or. They are vessels filled with the light of God. But then he said that the Hasidic teaching would say that the Dofnei HaKelim are also from the Or. That the walls of the vessels are themselves made of that same light. The material through which the world was created was God Himself. It's just in a different form, so to speak, if that's the way we could explain it. So, but still, with that being said, the heretical type of pantheism that all Orthodox Jews must reject is that there's this world and nothing more. And the traditional view is that there is much, much more in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. And like it says in the book of Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. It's a much higher, more world that we cannot imagine. And so to limit it to only this creation is short-sighted. And so that's the answer. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.